Hello, in this video we are going to look at one of the most commonly known and most inefficient sorts out there, and that's the bubble sort. Before we get into a lot of the kind of fancy animations to help you understand things, let's just look at a list and apply the bubble sort algorithm. We're not interested in the coding of it right now, we just want to understand how it works. In some of the later videos you'll see an example of how to code them in a few languages. So let's imagine I want to sort this list using bubble sort. What I do is I basically draw a bubble around two elements and make a comparison. So I'm going to draw a bubble right now around the 3 and the 6 here, and I'm going to compare them. And what I'm going to check is that if the left element is larger than the right element, I'm going to swap them. Otherwise I'm going to leave them the same. So here I see that 3 is smaller than 6, so I don't do anything. And now I shift that bubble up my list. In this case, 6 is larger than 2, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap those two elements. And what you'll see there is that now when I shift my bubble again, that 6 is being pulled up through the list. And now I'm going to look and I see that 6 is smaller than 7, so I'm not going to do anything. I see that 7 is larger than 1, so I'm going to swap them. And then I see that 7 is less than 8, so I don't do anything. So now that my bubble's at the end of my list, what I know for sure is that the largest value will have bubbled all the way to the end. And so what I know is that this 8 now is sorted. It is in the correct position if I was to sort this list. But everything else is not quite there. So I have to go through and do this again. But this time, I'm only going to take the bubble up to the second last element because we know that this element is sorted. So I'm going to compare. 3 is greater than 2, so I swap them. And I shift. I see that 3 is less than 6, so I don't do anything. I see that 6 is greater than 1, so I swap them. And then I shift. And I see that 6 is less than 7, so I don't do anything. And now I know that the 7 is in the correct sorted position. So I bring my bubble back to the start. And now I go through that process again, but I'm only going to reach this element here, the 6. So I'm going to compare. 2 is less than 3, so I don't do anything. 3 is greater than 1, so I swap them. 3 is less than 6, so I don't do anything. And then I bring my bubble back to the start. Look, 2 is greater than 1, so I swap them. 2 is less than 3, so I don't do anything. 3 is now sorted. I shift my bubble back to the start. And I look, 1 is less than 2, so I don't do anything. And the bubble's at the end. And what's happened now is that all I have is one element left. And since I have one element left, I know that's sorted, so now my list is sorted. And that's the bubble sort. The bubble sort is this idea of moving a bubble along your list and then comparing the two elements and then deciding whether or not to swap them. So now let's look at a bit more of let's look at the same example, but we have a few more kind of aids in here to help us understand. So when we're coding this, what we do is we kind of write some loops to go through the index values. So here's my list. I have 6 elements in my list, and the indexes go from 0 to 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a loop. And that loop is going to compare element at index I to element at I plus 1. So in this case, I'll look 3 and 6. 3 is less than 6, so I don't do anything. And I want to make my bubble needs to reach this very last element on my first pass. So I don't do anything there. And now I'm going to shift my bubble. I is equal to I plus 1. I'm going to swap those elements. Shift my bubble. I'm going to do my comparison, which you can see over here. If list at I is greater than list at I plus 1, and this is my swap algorithm to swap those two elements. I'm going to shift my bubble. I have to make a swap. I'm going to shift my bubble. And now my bubble is at the very end of the list. And what this means is that this 8 is in the correct position. So now I'm going to move my bubble back to the start of the list. I'm going to shift my bubble end down 1, and I'm going to run through the process again. And I'm going to kind of continue through here. No swap. Swap. No swap. And when I'm done, I know that 7 is now in the correct position, so I'm going to shift my bubble back to the start, move my bubble end down 1, and we see everything to the right of the bubble end is now sorted. So I'm going to shift, I'm going to swap, They're in perfectly good position. So the 6 is now sorted, so I move back to the start, shift my bubble end down. I'm going to compare these two values. They have to swap. I'm going to shift. I don't have to swap here. So 3 is now sorted. And now I'm going to shift my bubble down. I'm going to compare these two values. And they're fine, so I'm not going to do anything. And now what happens is, look what happens to my bubble end. My bubble end is going to move to the end. So bubble end is equal to 0, meaning since I only have one element now, it must be sorted. So therefore, it's in the right position, and I've sorted my list. And that's the bubble sort. So in our next video, we're going to look at an implementation in Java, and then we're going to look at an implementation in Python 3. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Have a wonderful day.